Today on Doomed!
Ho, 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 ho.
This is the year indie platforming, everybody. That's right. Today on Doomed, we will be taking a look back at basically every single person, well, not every single person, but all the major players who were banned this year on social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and more. And joining me for this look back, reminiscing on the folks that, the assholes we no longer have to pay attention to online. How about that? Is Rachel Kraus. She's a reporter at Mashable, which I think I've heard of that place before. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Matt.
Pulling us up on the stream now so people can see us. There we go. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Hi. I'm great.
Now, if people couldn't get from my sarcastically questioning what Mashable is, Rachel is my coworker.
Yeah, we used to sit just 2 desks down, but I recently moved to LA, so now we're long-distance coworkers.
Right. But, I talked to you in Slack, which, interesting enough, banned their own slew of users today for a completely different reason than most of these networks.
So weird.
Yeah.
And kind of messed up, right?
Right. Really quick so people know. So basically, today, Slack banned a bunch of people for, at one point or another, logging into their Slack account while in a country sanctioned by the U.S. That's, North Korea, Iran, Cuba, Syria, and Crimea. And, some of these people, I spoke to some of them. I wrote an article today for Mashable. And, some of these people I spoke with, the last time they were in one of these countries was like 4 years ago. Who even was using Slack 4 years ago? Were you using Slack 4 years ago, Rachel?
No, definitely not. I think I started Slack in grad school, which was like 2 years ago. So that was the first I'd heard of it.
We get it, Rachel. You're young. We get it.
I'll be 30 very soon. So.
Oh, so okay. So you're not that young. I guess you're old.
I'm a middle millennial.
Right. I'm at the I'm sort of the older end of the millennial spectrum.
Elder millennial, as Eliza, what's her name, says.
All right. So Rachel, let's start off by talking about basically what deplatforming is, because earlier in the year you wrote a great piece about really the poster boy for deplatforming and being banned from social media, and that's my dear friend, not really, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yes, we owe so much to Milo for what he's shown us about the powers of deplatforming. Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background.
That's fine.
Can hear that.
Everybody will be enjoying Rachel's dog barking in the background for the entirety of this episode, I'm sure. But that's okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We'll have to deplatform him too, sooner or later.
Don't you freaking dare. Give Mary a voice. So deplatforming is the name that's basically a catchphrase for the idea of banning someone or removing someone from usually a social media platform, but it doesn't have to just be a social media platform. So I'm removing them from some internet service when they break that service's terms of service. Right. This has come to the fore this year because 2017 in the after the Charlottesville riot, we began to see how hate speech online was causing real-world violence and action in a way that we hadn't before. Obviously, it had been percolating for a long time before that. And then 2018 has just been a continued horror show in that vein, showing that speech online has real-world consequences. So deplatforming is kind of the bluntest tool that social media and online and internet companies can use when someone violates their terms. For example, a lot of these platforms don't allow hate speech. They don't allow targeted harassment campaigns. They don't allow spam. But I actually like the name because it kind of speaks to the larger phenomenon, which is that people are always going to be, having hateful thoughts, speaking hateful words. We're a society of racists and bigots. But those voices only started to actually matter and make an impact once they had a platform. So deplatforming just means, no, you can't use our platforms to spread your vitriol anymore.
Right. And Rachel, I also must ask, why do these social media networks and companies and tech companies, why do they hate our First Amendment rights? Don't they believe in free speech?
This is a conflation of what the First Amendment actually means. Free speech only gives you a right in a government setting, a right to say anything you want in a government setting. But these platforms are private entities. Actually, a recent lawsuit found that YouTube couldn't, when someone who was deplatformed from YouTube sued, they found that YouTube didn't apply to the same standards as the First Amendment because it's not a public forum. There's an argument to be made that these places are public forums, but so far that's not what the law is saying.
Right. Now, Rachel, why is the law wrong? No, no, but it's something that I wish conservatives would finally understand, but I don't think they ever will. And, I mentioned on the last episode, part of the reason this whole thing, even where conservatives think that there is some sort of anti-conservative bias on these social media platforms, is thanks to our dear editor, Michael Nunez. Well, but he's going to come on the show, actually, like I've mentioned, and he's going to actually run this whole down for us because, like I've said before, it's not his fault.
It's not his fault, but also it honestly comes down to the platform's fault, because the reason that we have this controversy and that we conflate deplatforming with a restriction of freedom of speech based on tech companies' liberal bias is because of these platforms' overall refusal to actually enforce their terms until there's a public fight, until liberals say, these guys are spewing hate speech, they're violating your terms, what are you going to do about it? So it appears to be a partisan fight when it isn't actually one, and it's only because the social media companies have dug themselves into a hole by not abiding by their own rules.
Right. That's
enforcing their own rules.
That's real. That really is the crux of it. If they just got ahead of these things and actually enforced their rules when they were broken, and not a bunch of people, and not when a bunch of people realize, hey, these rules are being broken and nothing's happening. They would really get ahead of it and solve a lot of their problems.
And that's not my opinion, by the way. That comes from interviews I've been doing with experts on this topic who monitor conservative media, as well as hate speech and its connection to violence online.
Right. And let's get back to Milo, because
oh yes, please.
He actually, we're not actually into the 2018 look back at those we've lost yet in this episode.
In memoriam.
Right, the in memoriam. Thank you. And the reason for that is because Milo actually was the deplatforming of Milo began in 2016 when Twitter really dealt the death blow that sent him into a downward spiral where he is now millions of dollars in debt. And so why don't we start there? What happened to Milo in 2016? So
for a while, Milo was, as you remember, in his heyday, he was kind of a poster boy for the alt-right. He really poured gasoline on the Gamergate controversy to kind of turn it from a fringe thing into something that was really out in the open. He became that got him a lot more cachet on Breitbart, and it also overall kind of took these, like, Milo was kind of the bridge between the 4chan world and Breitbart, and it kind of, and as we know, Breitbart became the bridge between the alt-right and mainstream conservative media. And I kind of see Milo as the linchpin for all of that, because it was kind of through his personality, his cult of personality, that it was able to make that leap, I think. But anyway, so that's where Milo stood. He was riding high, and then he engaged in a targeted harassment campaign against the SNL comedian Leslie Jones. I believe this is the first thing that happened, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so that got him off Twitter, and that was a huge loss for him because, as we know, Twitter is a super effective platform if you're trying to spread ill-informed hate speech. But so that didn't leave him high and dry. He still had other platforms at his disposal. He was still writing on Breitbart. He had a book coming out. And then he made some pretty unwise comments, basically defending pedophilia. And it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty baffling.
Don't you hate when you accidentally do that?
Hate it. But that got him kicked off of Breitbart. He lost his book deal, and that took us into 2017. And since then, he's kind of disappeared from view. He flares up every once in a while whenever there's he tries to do a speaking engagement or something like that, and then people at especially on universities, and there's like brief controversies because people are like, no, we don't want this guy speaking at our university, so then they cancel those things, and it's just kind of more evidence of deplatforming in like the most literal sense of the word, if he's not going to get to speak at that podium anymore. Right. And so recently, he posted, this was, I believe, this summer. Yeah, so in late August, Milo posted this video of himself like enjoying champagne and seafood on Facebook, which is kind of the only platform he has left. And the comments went wild. He like attacked, people were like, what are you doing? And then he like attacked them, and it was super vitriolic, and he was like, I've lost everything. He doesn't make any more money. He's super in debt. He can't like do anything that he used to do, and he's basically feeling sorry for himself these days. And then, he kind of walked it back a little bit later. But these posts in my article, I argue that these posts kind of show that like deplatforming works. Like, this was a person who I think is very is played a role in the radicalization of political and online society, and he's pretty irrelevant now.
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the more proof that deplatforming works is that they're now, as in Milo and other recently deplatformed figures, are coming out and saying, yeah, deplatforming has screwed us over. They're admitting deplatforming works by saying they're in shambles ever since losing whatever platform they had on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And, the interesting thing about Milo, actually, is to me, he actually, he's not just the poster boy because he was the first. He's the poster boy because there's no one who's lost more. And in my opinion, it's because Milo was the most vapid, the most superficial of all of them. Say what you will about Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes and, I don't know, anyone else who's been deplatformed, Laura Loomer even, they all have, somewhat...
they're zealots. They
Right.
believe they believe it. They're not
Right.
just stirring up shit for the sake of stirring up shit. It's
Right.
like they actually believe this stuff, and he just liked to poke the bear, make trouble, and like cause controversy for his own sake.
Right. I do think he believed it too, but they're out there to spread this stuff. Whereas Milo was just using the stuff he believed to promote himself. It was all about Milo. Whereas these other guys are, obviously it's all about them too, but it's also, in addition to being about them, about what they're saying. Milo stood for nothing. And I think, when his audience, who liked when he was causing outrage and making the SJWs and the libs cry on Twitter, that sort of riled them up, and that's what made them like him. But without that, they realize he's got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
I think that also like is an interesting question that we don't really know the answer to yet, is about like what is the role of a leader in these environments, because some of the experts I've spoken with have said, when you cut the head off the snake, like, the group is in a shambles. But others that I've spoken to have said, nope, like, that hate speech is going to exist. These are still, like, excommunicating these people are largely symbolic gestures. So, like, for Milo personally, it was a huge loss, but we actually don't know yet what effect that's had on the community. I mean, there's certainly, like, alt-right trolls still out there.
Right. No, I don't think it's... Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's hurt. I mean, there obviously it does hurt the overall far-right, and, all these guys are from so many different sub-movements within the broader, far-right movement here. I think it has hurt, conspiracy theorists. It has hurt alt-righters. But overall, I think you're correct in terms of it's really just about the individual losing their sort of, I guess, leadership role in some ways. And, another reason I brought up Milo up front is that he actually recently did lose what is the final, I think, nail in the coffin for him. And that is literally, I think it was a day after that the news came out that he was deep in debt, millions of dollars, I think. He set up a Patreon, and Patreon shut it down within, I think, like, hours. And also another reason I bring it up is there was actually a debate online where Milo's deplatforming got pulled into it. There's currently a discussion on Twitter about this recent boycott trying to convince advertisers to drop Tucker Carlson over his recent comments on immigrants. And I believe he called them dirty and poor, which is wonderful. Thank you for that astute analytical observation, Tucker Carlson. But the overall fight going on right now on social media is whether these boycotts against Tucker Carlson are, in a sense, that's also deplatforming in a way. Whether these boycotts are a positive thing. Some people believe it's putting too much in the hands of corporations. It's a capitalist response. Other people believe that these tactics can be used against the left too, which, I mean, show me the left-wing cable news TV show, and I guess it can be used against that. But the point is that there is no left-wing cable news TV show. But the way Milo got brought into it is that Glenn Greenwald is actually against this Tucker Carlson boycott. And he actually, and I think he's wrong here, and I like Glenn a lot. I agree with him probably 99.99999% of the time, is he thinks Milo's deplatforming actually helped him. And his reason is that basically the Mercers still funded him up until long after that happened, meaning that, they weren't swayed by liberals knocking Milo off of social media. And I disagree with that because clearly the deplatforming is one of the reasons why the Mercers, even though it didn't happen right away, why the Mercers decided to cut ties with Milo. It wasn't after the pedophilia comments. It wasn't directly after the Nazi ties, even though they say it was part of that. But my opinion is the deplatforming of Milo that started with Twitter, which is the long, and I just said this earlier, downward spiral for him. And, as 2016 turned into 2017 and the years progressed, the Mercers decided, hey, this guy is just not performing for us. There's no return on investment. He's not as important or as popular as he once was when we decided to start funding him. And, with these scandals coming out, he's just not worth it.
I mean, I think all we have to do is look to Milo's own words to like as you pointed out earlier.
Right.
He said he's lost. He is life is no longer like the party it once was.
I almost feel like playing the world's saddest song on a tiny violin.
I know, man.
Right. Now, for those listening to the podcast, Rachel just signaled the the I don't know. She picked up an imaginary.
It's the smallest violin in the world,
Right.
playing "My Heart Bleeds for You."
Right.
That's what my dad used to do when I would complain about something.
Now, speaking of music, I've actually prepared a little intro for our in memoriam of those we've lost to deplatforming in 2018. Now, I would like to say that the song is not that song. In fact, it is a song from YouTube's pre-approved free music library, so I don't get any sort of, copyright takedown strikes. But it works. So, without further ado, give me 1 second here. Let's pull up this sad little song. It's actually called "We'll Meet Again," which actually, going into 2019, a lot of these folks we probably will see very little of. I don't know if you're hearing this, Rachel. I think this is not set up for you to hear it, but there's a very sad song playing right now.
I'm really bummed.
I'm just gonna take it in for a minute. I've prepared a small speech, and by small speech, I mean like calling it 2 lines would be generous. Now let's take a look back on all those that were banned from various different online platforms in 2018 and reminisce on their deplatforming. We will miss you all. Not. Alright, let's turn this music down. This is terrible. Alright, so Rachel, I think we should start off by talking, and we should mention up front, Rachel has a piece along with her great Milo deplatforming piece, she has a piece coming out. Isn't this amazing, people? This is the only show where you'll probably hear from a guest who is going to talk about a piece that is not yet out. Unbelievable. Only on Doomed.
I mean, we can blame Elon Musk. He stole a whole day of reporting from me. It's not out yet.
I almost feel like I know I just built up that whole thing, but you went to this Elon Musk his Hyperloop opening thing. You were there. You saw the Hyperloop.
Not a Hyperloop. It's just a loop, and it's just a tunnel where you drive a car through it.
Did you ride in it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Up now on Mashable.com, baby.
It is something that we went from being able to have 2 lanes in most tunnels to now we have thanks to our tech billionaires 1 lane in our underground tunnel.
It's all about streamlining, simplification. I like efficiency. Okay.
Right. Let me tell you, nothing. I think nothing would probably make me happier. Well, aside from winning the lottery, somehow striking it rich in various different ways, other than all those things, nothing would make me happier than in a year from now to do an episode looking back on those deplatformed in 2019 and Elon Musk being on that list. Really, it would.
Oh.
So
I don't know about that.
But, yeah.
I don't know if he's gonna cross a line.
Right.
Across the line that difficult to cross.
Right. Well, he has already shown up on Joe Rogan's show, which is actually the first step for many to start crossing that line. So let's get back to actually 2018 before I look back on 2019.
Yeah.
And let's start with, I think, probably the individual who is, who the biggest deplatforming of the year, and that is Alex Jones.
Yeah, we couldn't not start with Alex Jones. I mean, Alex Jones is really what I would say is the reason that I'm writing this piece, because without Alex Jones, it's kind of all these we all know about these guys, but it's a lot of these fringe figures who have made themselves important by the followers they've been able to get thanks to social media platforms. But Alex Jones, the president went on Alex Jones's show. He has had a huge we see how when a conspiracy theory goes on Alex Jones, that's what helps it make it to Fox, which is get it into the president's mind and mouth. and Twitter feed. Anyway,
Right.
so is Alex Jones really deplatformed? Anyway, but
I mean, he's actually one of the, to me, I think, he's one of the people who, while his deplatforming is huge and without a doubt hurts him, I think of all the people we're going to talk about, and even including Milo, obviously including Milo, because we just talked about how much deplatforming it has hurt him, I think Alex Jones will actually make it out pretty A-okay.
I don't know. I mean, do you see him at these hearings? I mean,
well, that's him as, that's classic Alex Jones,
but it
actually.
looks so pathetic.
Oh,
it just is like him screaming in the back with like a lone cameraman. It's like he looks like a ranting crazy person. Like, at least when he had a YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and PayPal, like there's like, it was a sheen of legitimacy there, which is like the whole problem, right? Is that like these platforms like allow, idiots like us to look legitimate. But now it's just, I think it's had an impact. I think it has exposed him for the kind of like inherently comical figure that he is.
Right. But also, I have to just say that pathetic, insane, angry man ranting is, for a long time, it's probably since the very beginning, been Alex Jones's brand.
Oh yeah, that's his hashtag personal brand for sure.
Right. And, actually, again, unlike a lot of these people, Alex Jones was very smart, and he diversified his revenue streams. He wasn't just making money from YouTube, wasn't just making money from any of these platforms. He's got his
supplement business.
Right, his supplement business. And he's got, along with that, he's got memberships, people paying straight to InfoWars. No, but really, like, super male vitality and all that other weird stuff that he sells. Surprisingly funds that business like a lot. Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me. There was a piece where someone looked into, just how much money he was making from his e-commerce business, and it's insane.
This brings up a great point, though, which is something that I was told, that like it is for Alex Jones, yes, but especially for smaller like Nazi Party leaders. Deplatforming them from payment processors is the most effective thing you can do.
Right.
Because taking away a megaphone is one thing, but like taking away their actual financial ability to organize is disproportionately effective.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Even though I think most people don't realize that because, platforms like Stripe or PayPal or Patreon, people don't usually, go on there to socialize, so they don't see these figures on there every day like they do on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. And Alex Jones, if there was a year for him to lose his visibility, I think this was the year. Say what you want about Alex Jones, and I've said this on the show before, is that the guy is actually, and again, unlike a lot of these others, he's actually really talented at what he does in terms of being a media personality. Much like how Rush Limbaugh is talented at what he does. Like, if these guys were not spewing horrible shit, you would go, man, that guy's a good broadcaster. And I mean, they're entertaining and they know how to keep a crowd in the palm of their hands. It's just sad that they're terrible, horrible people spewing the worst things I've ever heard in my life. But, it's also a long way from, 9/11 trutherism, which is, in the long run, saying that George Bush did 9/11 doesn't really hurt anyone who isn't in power already. Whereas the most recent turn for Alex Jones, that really, to me, I think is where he finally crossed the line after everything he's ever done. Finally, I think Alex Jones went that step too far, beyond far, was the Sandy Hook trutherism. Because there you have what amounts to convincing your audience to not attack those in power who have, who aren't going to be really affected by what you say because you're not that important when compared to those people, like George Bush. They also have security and many levels of protection around them. Those people are not going to have any harm done to them. But when you send your audience out to go to Newtown, Connecticut, and harassed parents of children who were killed in the Sandy Hook shooting, I mean, you're doing real harm to what amounts to extremely powerless people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he definitely has crossed every line that you can cross. I mean, we can't forget, and it was the Sandy Hook targeted harassment that is what pushed him off the platforms ultimately, I believe. But like, we can't forget his role in Pizzagate, where, you know, his like help spreading this nonsense conspiracy theory, resulted in real world violence. Like, I think that connection between what happens in a digital space and what happens in the real world is absolutely like critical to getting these social media companies to act. And like, the biggest problem is that it takes something happening in the real world for that to happen, as opposed to rooting out the problem at its base. And I think Alex Jones is an example of that. Right.
And, you know, it's interesting enough, too, that, you know, it isn't even the Sandy Hook stuff that got him banned from YouTube and Facebook. And, you know, another interesting thing, before we even get to this, is the domino effect that caused the bannings. Because if you'll recall, when there were originally these calls to ban Alex Jones, all these companies were basically passing the buck and saying, these things that we said these things break our policy, but we're looking at this video and we're not gonna, YouTube gave him like 20 strikes instead of 3 strikes. Mm-hmm. And all it took was for one of these major tech companies, and in this case it was Apple, saying, all right, we've had enough. And they took the InfoWars app off their app store. And that set the course for all the other companies to go, oh shit, Tim Cook.
Was a total domino effect.
Right. They were like, Tim Cook and Apple did something. Shit, we'll look bad if we don't do something.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the last couple years, there have been multiple calls for him to be removed. There have been public pressure campaigns. There have been temporary bans, but it took one big tech company to do it for everything to fall. But then, of course, there was the Twitter controversy, and Jack Dorsey totally like putting his foot in his mouth again and again before finally like forcing himself to enforce the rules of his own platform.
I'd forgotten all about that. What exactly happened? Yeah. Like, how many times did Jack, like, what was going on there?
So it took 7 days. Oh, sorry, there's some commotion in my house.
That's all good. The dog just knocked over an entire table full of like Christmas trees and ornaments and everything.
You have no idea. She rules the roost here. Yeah. So Apple bans Alex Jones. Facebook bans Alex Jones. YouTube bans Alex Jones. And the next biggest player is Twitter. And everyone's like, what the hell is Jack Dorsey doing over there? Like, why is Alex Jones still on this thing? Why are all these InfoWars accounts still on there? CNN even did a tweet-by-tweet analysis showing all the times he specifically violated their already weak sauce policy. And Jack went on TV multiple times to like tell how he didn't comment on individual accounts, except now he is, and how the reasons why this didn't apply. And then finally they capitulated.
Right.
It was kind of like a big controversy for nothing.
And then if I remember correctly, InfoWars still skirted the rules by having Alex Jones tweet from their other accounts before they were also banned, and also streaming their show on Periscope, which is owned by Twitter.
Oh yeah,
right.
Periscope, good times.
Right. Yeah. And what I was saying before I thought of that was, the interesting thing is it wasn't even the Sandy Hook trutherism that got Alex Jones banned. I mean, it took multiple instances. I think one thing he did was like call for people to take up arms for some sort of issue.
Against Mueller.
Right. Another thing was he called for, I believe he called for violence against Muslims just for I mean, he doesn't really, fun. Right. Yeah. He doesn't really need a reason. He's Alex Jones. Right. But so he really is if Milo is the overall poster boy for deplatforming, and Alex Jones is the face of deplatforming in 2018, I think. But he's also the one, I think, who will make it out, I don't want to say okay, because he's not going to be as strong as he was, but I think when all the other guys are long gone from being deplatformed, Alex Jones will still be hanging on.
Yeah. And Alex Jones actually also plays like an outsized role in the ecosystem. Apparently, people that monitor the rise of like hate speech and violence online see him as basically kind of like a gateway drug to radicalization. It's like once you find Alex Jones and you go down a rabbit hole, it's hard to come back from.
A lot of these guys are like that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these guys have experienced that, have actually like Mike Enoch or whatever. Like,
no, you're talking about, right?
Yeah, like they have actually lived the radicalization perpetuated by people like Jones. But anyway, like, yeah, so his influence will continue to be felt despite being kicked off the major platforms, because he is, I think, first of all, because he's still streaming his show on the web, on the internet.
That's a great point, actually,
because he's already a big enough figure in his own right.
Right, that too. In a lot of ways, I think people don't realize this when talking about, just all these, deplatforming in general. Alex Jones got into this whole video streaming of his show thing so early, like way before there was even an ecosystem that really facilitated video streaming, way before YouTube even. And because of that, he's been able to build up this audience, build up this revenue stream that he's basically paying for his own streaming service to still stream his show on his website. And on top of that, I believe he still is syndicated in different terrestrial radio affiliates.
I'm not sure, but I believe it.
Right. So let's move on now from Jones to I think the most recent one, besides Milo and Patreon, and that's Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys.
We got to go to the Proud Boys and to Gavin McInnes, but particularly because he represents. Well, first of all, let's give some background. So these guys are banned from basically every platform now, except for YouTube, Matt, your favorite platform. And that's because the banning of Gavin McInnes and the Proud Boys from YouTube represents a flaw with the deplatforming as a tool, because so I'll explain. So Gavin McInnes was banned from YouTube not because he's, like inciting violence and telling people that he's in a gang and like letting you know that, you're the highest tier of the gang if you fight someone. But they actually kicked him off because of copyright infringement. And as of today, he's back on YouTube because he fixed the issues with copyright.
I did not know he was back, because I know he was banned, like, originally.
Yeah. So he's as of I believe 1 week ago, he's back on YouTube, still off everywhere else, because they banned him not for hate speech or not for all the actual terrible things that were going on, but because of copyright, which is the stickiest area for YouTube. Okay. And it kind of speaks to like the weak sauce nature of deplatforming, because it allows these companies to take this kind of like big PR-y, public facing stance, but they're not actually citing the actual reasons, and that's something that you don't really know unless you look into it. And now quietly he's back.
Right. I think that it was I'm looking right now, and it seems like there were all these news stories and articles and reports that came out when he was banned from YouTube, and I literally see one article about his reinstatement from like The Wrap days later. It was just undercovered. I don't think anyone really even noticed. I didn't even.
Yeah. It speaks to the really patchwork nature of enforcing these platform's rules and the problem with deplatforming as a tool of enforcement.
Right. And to your point earlier, actually, I think the Proud Boys, while they're on YouTube still, they are another one of those cases where going after their revenue stream via PayPal and Stripe hurt them more than anything, because apparently these guys were really funding their whole operation. And again, when I say that, it's very loosely in terms of, especially when comparing it to something like InfoWars. These guys are just a bunch of alt-righters, white supremacists who, get together and drink and show up at events and push buttons and try to beat up counter-protesters. And really one of the things that put them in the spotlight actually was a couple of weeks ago when Gavin McInnes was in the streets with a sword and directing his Proud Boys to attack members of Antifa who were just outside counter-protesting an event he was speaking at in New York. So, very loosely, I should say that these guys have some sort of major revenue stream that keeps them alive. But whatever money they were making that helps, them run the Proud Boys, they lost that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's so, it's so powerful, right? Like the reason that the Proud Boys and all these people were able to organize Charlottesville was because of revenue. Was because of revenue from PayPal and stuff like that. So like cutting off the money, again, to harp on it, like is way more impactful than anything else.
Right. And on that note, actually, let's also talk about Tommy Robinson from the UK. Let's jump across the Atlantic Ocean. And I guess for you would have to first jump back to New York and then hop across the Atlantic Ocean. But let's go to our friends in England and talk about Tommy Robinson and the British. Really, what is the British alt-right? I guess really, there's the EDL, Tommy Robinson's former leader of the English Defence League. He's this horrible Islamophobic group over there. He's not with them anymore. But the thing with Tommy Robinson is actually that unlike some of these guys, like Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes, even Alex Jones here actually, I think Tommy Robinson has pivoted more to the mainstream in England than any of these guys we're talking about in the U.S. have done in the American media. Tommy Robinson has become like a mainstream face of UK conservatism.
Yeah, I mean, so in addition to Tommy Robinson, Facebook banned Britain First and two of Britain First's very visible leaders recently, and like they made Brexit happen. Like,
right.
Right. Like the whole shit show that the UK is dealing with right now. Yes, it made its way up to like Nigel Farage and those guys, but like the hardcore Islamophobes of Britain First were the base for this movement, and like this is where the rumbling began. So I like maybe it's because they're a smaller country, who knows? But like these guys have real influence in their country.
Right. And what happened with them? What was the breaking point for like Tommy Robinson or Britain First? What did they actually do? Like,
I think you're more familiar with Tommy Robinson than I am. I actually need to look more into that still. But with Britain First, it was Islamophobic. It was like Islamophobic hate speech on Facebook.
If I recall, I think it's the same with Tommy Robinson. But definitely go ahead with what you were saying.
Yeah, that's what I've got to say. Like,
Right. Right. No, but the reason I wanted to bring them up after the Proud Boys is because these guys also had their funding cut thanks to deplatforming, and it's not something that's all that visible. And speaking of more current events, I mean, I believe I was just reading earlier that Tucker Carlson's show today, the first commercial break was literally all PSAs, taking away their monetization abilities has a real effect on these sorts of people. And I also want to say, just as an addendum here, as I'm sounding like I want these, this is not, I could care less about these guys specifically, but I actually do have real, reservations about, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, about just the power of these platforms. And I do think that there is some sort of slippery slope to some extent where, giving these, tech companies just so much, they cover so much of what we do online. You want to do a video stream. Here I am on YouTube. You want to share your podcast link. You might host that MP3, but how do you find your audience? They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on Patreon. They're on, I don't know, Pinterest, even Tumblr, whatever you want to share it on. Google Plus, even though that will soon no longer be with us. No one's on Google Plus. No one ever was on Google Plus. But it's up to these platforms to give you that sort of that voice to share this stuff. And again, that's why I sort of have these reservations. But for these specific people, this is not the hill I'm going to die on. Do I wish that Alex Jones was still on Twitter for me to dunk on? And yeah, sort of, I guess. But am I gonna say that Alex Jones shouldn't be banned? Absolutely not. He deserved what he had coming to him. These are the consequences for all these guys. That's sort of where I stand. It's sort of it's a gray area to me. But again, for these guys, not the hill I'm dying on. So long, suckers. Yeah.
Well, it's like, yes, these companies shouldn't have all this power. But the only reason that they do is because our government has failed to regulate them up until this point. It's taken data breaches and crises of democracy to start saying, oh shit, like what's going on over there? Like if there were consequences for not enforcing your terms, maybe enforcing your terms would be something that they prioritize, like
right.
If there were consequences for, for hosting the thoughts, ideas, and hate speech of someone who goes on to commit violence, if there was any sort of liability, then like maybe this wouldn't be happening.
Right. And let's talk about what this slippery, and I absolutely agree with that. And so let's talk about what the consequences are for basically this tech hellscape we're currently in, where they rule over our, essentially their private companies running public spaces. And well,
I think that's the question, is it a public space, and I think that we kind of don't have an answer to that question yet. Like, Donald Trump uses Twitter as his mode of communicating with the public, but Twitter is a publicly owned and traded, publicly owned company. Twitter is a company.
Right.
So we don't know yet.
Right.
We don't have a good definition yet.
Right. I actually think it's sort of analogous in ways to Zuccotti Park, where Occupy Wall Street started down in lower Manhattan, the financial district, back in 2011. Zuccotti Park is a public space that's managed by a private company. I think it's called Brookfield. And the issue here is that the city allowed them to, I think it was like some sort of, they got to expand some sort of building or get around some sort of zoning law if they managed this public space. And the city basically doesn't want to run a public space because they get to save money by putting it on top of, by giving that responsibility to one of these companies. And in turn, these companies have to allow the public there, but they are allowed to put some sort of rules on there. And it was this sort of gray area during Occupy where they were there for months camping out in Zuccotti Park, and Brookfield was trying to figure out what to do. And in the end, Brookfield was allowed to evict them because while Zuccotti Park is a public space, Brookfield could have some sorts of rules, such as you can't set up tents, or we can close it from certain hours to clean so it can be used as a public space. And I think that's sort of, in some ways, what we're looking at here. And let's talk about one of these companies that is sort of running amok just recently in banning content that I personally, and I think many other people will agree, should not be banned because it's nothing like this stuff that is being banned, and that's Tumblr.
Yeah, so recently Tumblr has instated a ban on adult content, pornographic content. It's defining that as someone with female presenting nipples, nudity, sexual acts, including illustrations, and the purge happened 3 days ago. I mean, they kind of rolled it out in a way that said, okay, if you've got adult content, we're going to let you like take it off the site and archive it. Like, they didn't just shut it all down, they gave notice. But people are really criticizing this move because Tumblr, in the short history of the internet, Tumblr has been a haven for weirdos, you know,
Right.
to like, you know,
To be nice, it's been an artistic space for creatives.
okay, artistic for creatives, but like, there's a lot of sexual content on there that like helps people, you know, like, find their sexuality, or like,
Yeah, there's a huge
you know,
LGBT community on Tumblr for sure. Yes.
yeah. By weirdos, I didn't mean like, yeah, like,
I'm not saying you called those. No, no, no,
like,
no, no. That's a
it's
separate group from the weirdos.
No, I felt
you were talking
I felt
the
bad for
furries
saying
and
that. Yeah, like, I felt bad for saying that. But anyway, like, Tumblr is like this kind of unique space online that's weirdly supportive, and to take all of that content off is really a loss for a lot of people, particularly LGBTQ communities and women, and
the furries.
and can't forget the furries. But a lot of what this stems from is this new legislation that's totally disingenuous, which is this SESTA and FOSTA. Do you know about this?
Right. Yes. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So this is this new law that passed this year that includes incredibly harsh penalties. What it does is it makes internet providers liable for any like sexual misconduct that happens on their platforms. And what this was presented as was like a way to eradicate, like, you know, sex trafficking and all that, but it's like it's really disingenuous way of censoring sexual content online by prudes and religious people.
I think most people probably noticed the change in their various internet places. When I sometimes go to Craigslist to look at apartments that I can't afford, or see what freebies people are offering up to come grab from their block. And one day I was like, Craigslist is looking a little bit different. What's going on here? And I had to like pull up like an archive of the page, and I was like, Casual Encounters is gone.
Personal section. There was a big controversy when Backpage closed, because that's where a lot of like it's where a lot of escorts advertise their services. And it basically, like, what experts were saying was that it was driving these sex workers offline and into more dangerous environments. So like 2018, in terms of deplatforming, yes, we're seeing there's this whole component of like alt-right and hate speech and Nazi deplatforming, but we're also seeing the ripple effects of this like misguided legislation that is affecting sex workers and people who use the internet as a safe place for their sexuality.
Right. And let's now look at a platform that is also on your list, but is completely on the opposite side of the spectrum from Tumblr. And that would be making its appearance as, I think, the only platform to get deplatformed itself, Gab.
The meta deplatform of 2018.
Right.
So Gab bills itself as a free speech platform, which means that like it's become a home and a haven for Nazis and misogynists and anti-Semites and like, you know, all the bad things. And it just like runs wild there, and it's all in the name of free speech. Say whatever you want. So the problem is that after the Pittsburgh shooting, people discovered that the shooter had stated his intention to commit the shooting on Gab. So Gab is like, you know, working with authorities, and now they like have revised their policy, and they're saying that they don't allow speech that incites violence anymore. But, you know, after this platform was directly linked to this horrific tragedy. GoDaddy, PayPal, Stripe, and JoyNet, I don't know, all of the services that Gab relied on to host its platform, banned Gab. And so Gab went back offline. Gab went offline for a while. It's back now. They've found like a new hoster. I don't remember exactly what the technical thing is. So they're back, but it's definitely like not what it was. It's apparently like really glitchy and like doesn't function like Twitter at all anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's important, I think, to really drive home too. You know, there's terrible people on all these social networks, but these social networks are, and maybe surprising for some, such as YouTube, aren't explicitly offering this platform up to people who are who are terrible people. Like, they're not courting them specifically. Whereas Gab is really essentially doing that. It was a platform basically created for people on the far right who were being deplatformed elsewhere.
Well, it's a product of the false narrative that tech companies are not a safe space and are for conservatives and are like beholden to it's a product of conspiracy theory itself, I think.
Right. And speaking of the white nationalists over at Gab, there were some other white nationalists who lost their lovely Twitter accounts and Facebook pages and YouTube channels this past year. We don't have to go into all of them because there's a lot, but some of them. I think you named one before. I think Mike Enoch lost his. Right. Yep,
he lost. I think Twitter. He lost Twitter for sure. But he runs a podcast. I think it's called. He runs The Right Stuff and The Daily Show. Right. He's like was a leading figure in the Charlottesville rallies, but yeah, he's been kicked off. Paul Nealon, we can't forget about him.
He's the guy who was running in the primary against Paul Ryan, I think, right?
Mm-hmm. He was deplatformed. I gotta just
mention what his whole thing was. He would tweet out openly white nationalist ideology, white supremacist ideology, and I think the moment he crossed the line was when he put together a list of all the Jews in the media who were his. It was his enemy list of Jews in the media.
Yeah, and then on Facebook's very terrible news day yesterday, it came out that he was able to buy $12,000 worth of Facebook ads, some of which linked directly to one of his buddies, who's like, it's just straight up neo-Nazi.
What Mark Zuckerberg should do is, if he wants to make things right, he should take that money and donate it directly to me.
So there's another politician who tried to run against Dianne Feinstein in California, Patrick Little. He was even banned by Gab because he was too violent.
That takes, I mean, let's put it this way. You just told us that the guy who shot up the temple was fine on Gab until he actually committed his act of violence. This guy was apparently so far worse than that Gab banned him retroactively is the proper term, I think, right? Yeah, there we go.
Yep. And then we've got Jared Taylor, who's like another alt-right leader. He's actually suing Twitter currently for the right to get back on.
Good luck with that.
The shock jock Anthony Cumia lost his platform, but he's like literally, I think he's going on Joe Rogan and stuff like that still.
Could we just take a second to actually it's a quick second just to take that in, that Anthony Cumia, who would have been like just not long ago been a major name on this list, Opie and Anthony, one of the biggest like terrestrial radio shows probably ever, maybe. and he is now so unimportant, so is non-essential that he is just on your list as other white nationalists.
I hadn't heard of him. I hadn't heard of him
Really?
before. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Jim Norton and his show with Opie on the radio?
No, I was reading reading about it.
Right. These guys, like in the 90s, the 90s, I believe the 90s, they were trying to compete with Howard Stern, Opie and Anthony, and they were like not as talented in terms of, being able to do the things Howard did and get away with it. And they would often just take things too far in terms of, like, Howard would take things too far, but it was creative, and you'd be like, oh, wow, he did that, but it was sort of interesting. Even for those things that normally other people probably, you would have said that was too far. But Opie and Anthony was just like, they would get in trouble because they're going too far was just not all that creative.
Gross. Yeah, and so I think like those I do like literally have this list of like other white nationalists, and it's like kind of these hosts of guys that are not celebrities, they're not household names, but they're like rallying figures and kind of like leaders in this space that cross a line and eventually get themselves kicked off these platforms.
Right. And we could just quickly mention and talk about these few other, because there's one last person, an individual I want to get to that we'll end with, because I think she would be the perfect ending to this wonderful conversation. And but we'll get to her in a second. Really quick, just a few minutes on all of them together. There also were the fake account purges earlier this year, where Twitter, and I think other networks, I think YouTube recently had one where they basically just decided.
Facebook for sure.
Facebook did one, right?
They've done a lot, yeah.
Right, go ahead and explain that. What were the fake account purges?
So all of these platforms, after they've been dragged before Congress and been like, what the hell is going on there, have been like, oh shit, you're right, we've got Russians. So like this has been going on, the account purges have been going on for more than in 2018, but it's like getting bots off the platform, but it's also getting fake accounts off the platform, and they kind of do these like batch bans, these like large, like I think there were 700 pages recently that were banned. But
right.
Another example of Facebook still being weak sauce is that these pages, which were like, if you look at the pages, they were like fake news, misinformation accounts. Facebook banned them because they were spam, not because they were,
Right.
spreading misinformation.
Right. It's often hard to tell with these purges exactly what types of accounts they're getting rid of. Is it just, accounts that someone in, I don't know, India or Indonesia or wherever, the usual, spammy locations trying to get you to go to their like Blogspot blog and click a Google ad, whoever they're from. Is it those type of accounts just pushing that stuff out, or is it something more nefarious? But I always love the conservative reaction when these purges happen on Twitter, where they're like, I just lost 20,000 followers. What's going on? And it's really funny because they're accidentally admitting that their follower account was totally padded by all these just bullshit accounts.
Yeah, it's funny to see who loses the most.
Right. But interesting enough, I think you had an article actually that pointed out that over the summer, the big Twitter purge actually, Obama lost more followers than Trump, right?
Yeah, he did. I think he had more followers. Like
right.
he has way more. Like I think it was, I don't know if it was proportional, but it was like, yeah, he lost way more followers than Trump. He had a lot of fake accounts following him.
I think we should take another I need to, have an episode just to look into this Obama guy. I think there's something going on there. And
Obama, man.
What was that?
Obama.
Right. And let's right before we go to this final individual, let's talk about, and this is an extension to this. Recently Facebook banned a bunch of pages that were spreading fake news in Myanmar, and this is big to me because this Myanmar go ahead and explain who they banned on Facebook.
What's significant about so there were recent pages that most recently they banned a bunch of pages that were spreading like fake news and inciting violence and all the bad stuff that's led to what the UN is calling genocidal intention in Myanmar. But a few months ago, I believe, or I don't know, not immediately. Recently, Facebook banned a bunch of Myanmar generals, and this is a pretty unique instance of banning actual government officials, which is something that Facebook and Twitter and all these platforms have declined to do for our own republic.
Right, and it's actually the first, and not just for us, for any. This was the first, I believe, I was reading. I not believe I was reading. I literally wrote it in an article I wrote, so it's definitely true. Facebook, those Myanmar officials, it was the first time ever Facebook banned any sort of state official. Congrats, guys, for genociding the Rohingya Muslims over there and getting this wonderful world record. Good job. Really. So let's find...
Oh boy.
Right, yeah. So let's find...
Matt.
Right. Sometimes, maybe I'll get banned. No, that was clearly a joke, guys. It's clearly a joke. But let's finally end this with Laura. And I don't mean finally end this. It makes me sound like let's get this over with. No, this was great. I really enjoyed this. It was a great look back at all these terrible people who got...
What a year.
Yeah, who got banned in this horrible year. And, I'll probably end up titling this episode something like, it's the most wonderful bands of the year or something like that. But let's end this with the creme de la creme of the bands. And that is Laura Loomer. Now, Laura Loomer is up there with Alex Jones for me as someone who, as much as I hate what they say, I love what they do. It's very entertaining to me, and I mean it in a very serious way, because when you have someone out there like a Laura Loomer, she should be dunked on, because in many ways, even if the far right would like to sort of dissociate from someone as over the top as her, she is very much one of them. So hold her up as a shining star of an example of the far right and the fringe, and really let them own her. Take us through Laura Loomer and her year of getting deplatformed.
No, this is embarrassing. I don't know about her too much. What I know about her is her wonderful Twitter protest. But I think you're gonna start.
That's really all you need to talk about. That's really what. Now, Laura Loomer, she's long been. I first saw her on a feed. Oh man, early in 2017. I don't think I've ever mentioned this on this show, where I discovered Laura Loomer. Do you remember the Shia LaBeouf, He Will Not Divide Us, art project?
God. Yeah.
Right after Trump got elected? And
yeah.
This was actually sort of at the height of the alt-right's strength. And a bunch of just random, alt-right internet personalities would show up at the Museum of Moving Image in Astoria, where you can show up at any time and get on camera and be a part of this Shia LaBeouf art installation. And it was just this live stream, and they would show up and basically, do different things to sort of egg on whatever liberals or Shia LaBeouf fans would show up and try to be a part of this thing. They would sort of, try to own them in real life. And that's where that clip of a bunch of white supremacists pouring milk all over themselves came from. That clip's sort of gone everywhere now. But I don't think people really know the context of it. And there was this Twitch streamer who was friends with all of them, this girl named Brittany Valenti, who just was one of these 4chan gamers who, just being part of it makes her this, this alt-righter. But I don't think she even was really there for the ideology. She was very much like a Milo Yiannopoulos, just there for the attention, and because her buddies were there. And I learned about her through that, and then she showed up at an early protest when Trump first instated the the ban on people from certain countries trying to come in to the U.S. And there was this protest in Union Square, and she showed up to counter-protest, and she brought along with her to help, to hold the camera to stream her, Laura Loomer. And when Brittany Valenti got arrested at this event, Laura Loomer sort of took Brittany Valenti's stream, turned the camera, and put it on her. And that was the birth of Laura Loomer. She used Brittany Valenti's arrest to sort of propel herself as an alt-right figure. And she was, one thing she did during, not this past summer, but the summer before, was she interrupted that Shakespeare in the Park where Trump was, where a actor playing Trump, playing Julius Caesar, was a part of this sort of play. And her and Jack Posobiec were another alt-right figure who I've talked about on this show, were none too pleased about the Trump Caesar sort of artistic play there, and they interrupted one of the performances. And she sort of done these things just to get attention for herself. But then what finally pushed her over the line, what she finally did that got her that she did over the line that got her banned from Twitter, was that she started tweeting all this Islamophobic stuff about one of our incoming freshman congresswomen who were just elected from the Muslim Somalian woman from Minnesota, who is going to be one of our Democratic progressive representatives in the House come January. And so she got banned from that. And go ahead, Rachel, tell us what Laura Loomer did.
So Laura Loomer went to Twitter headquarters in New York, brought along a pair of handcuffs, chained herself to Twitter's front door, and also wore a yellow Star of David, which is what the Nazis made the Jews wear during the Holocaust, to scream about Twitter deplatforming her. And the beautiful thing that happened next was that Twitter said, okay, she can stay as long as she wants to.
Right.
So there was no fight. There was no, controversy. She was just, a woman, she had to move her sign at one point. But it was a very Alex Jones moment of ranting on the street, with people kind of, gawking at her, but it not being this big, grand gesture that I think she wanted it to be, because Twitter basically refused to engage.
Right.
Which was brilliant.
Right. It was sort of to me like, those old-timey carnies who would show up on the street with the monkey in the box, and everyone would surround them and watch the monkey come out and do all the tricks. Except when her whole thing was over and she finally gave up, she didn't even have, the little monkey to pickpocket and steal people's money. She walked away with nothing.
Yeah. I mean, she walked away with no platform. Boom.
Whoa. Rachel, you just ended it on the perfect note. I mean, I don't think I could top that. That really was,
You're welcome, Matt.
There you go. Rachel Kraus, reporter at a website that I think I've heard of called Mashable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a wonderful look back at the year in deplatforming and all the horrible people whose faces we won't see in the coming year, 2019. And, I think we'll see a lot more people being deplatformed because there's still a lot of shitheads on social media.
I won't pour one out. I'm going to save the drink for myself.
Again, trying to just... Do you have these prepared in advance? I mean...
No, Matt. It's just how I roll.
Just quick like that. All right, Rachel, happy holidays. Happy New Year. I will see you in Slack. You can follow Rachel and this is really a fantastic Twitter username. Please, Rachel, do me the honors here.
You can follow me at Real Krauswife. The full name was supposed to be the Real Krauswife of Orange County, but, character limits.
Right. A fantastic wordplay on your last name, Rachel. Really, I love it.
My last name. Yeah, you guys get it.
Right.
Thanks, Matt.
Some people you have to explain it for, but yeah. Rachel, thank you. Have a wonderful new year, and I'll see you in Slack.
See you in Slack. Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Let's go to the YouTube comments. And, well, first of all, you can support the show by going to patreon.com/MattBinder and give me your money. It's a better investment than the GoFundMe wall that's being funded right now. I'm not asking for $1 billion. I'm simply asking for you to give me $5. You can even give me less. Give me $1. Give me $2. Give me $3. Give me $4. You can also give me more. Give me 10. Give me 20. Give me 50. Give me 100. Give me 1,000. Give me $1 billion. Really, please. But again, if you cannot afford to do so, please do not give me money. I don't want anyone who can't do so to do so. I guess that sounds weird, but yes, that's what I'm trying to say here. But if you can give, I will be definitely 100% expanding this show in some way or another, whether it be another live stream episode or another podcast or something will be done. Maybe a video, a produced video series like the Real Fake News I used to do for Cafe. I've teased you guys with that, but it will be coming very shortly. And your Patreon dollars will help me basically make sense of me spending the time doing that to my partner and my son. Yes, so thank you. And also support the show by subscribing to the show on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com / you don't have to go to that. Go to doomed.tv and that will forward you to the YouTube channel. Boom. Subscribe. Leave a review on iTunes too, by the way. Please do that. And continue to harass your favorite live streams and podcasts with requests to have me on their shows or simply jump into their live chats and spam them with links to doomedpod.com and doomed.tv and at Matt Binder on Twitter and really just annoy people in general. One of my New Year's resolutions is to stop being a bad self-promoter and just really become a whore for myself and to just essentially promote myself in every way, shape, and form, no matter how sad it ends up looking. Because, fuck it, I got nothing to lose. That's me smiling into the camera and giving a thumbs up. So let's go to the YouTube comments. Geez. Upside down lettering here says Slack. DSA vets and SRA use Slack. I should really try to be on that more. Yeah, leftist podcasts sort of and live streams sort of use Discord. And I like Discord. I also like Slack. I think Slack is better at maintaining I think Slack is better for lay people. I sort of still find Discord a little bit confusing. I think it tries to be a little bit techie, and it sort of tries too hard to actually be techie and sound techie without actually being that techie. But I think the language and the sort of, different settings and stuff confuse people. I think Slack is much more straightforward. That being said, this, our wonderful listeners set up a Discord for this show, and I try to jump in there whenever I can. Misha says, I'm an elder, I guess. Theo, I like to think of it as an early adopter. They're talking about when me and Rachel are talking about us being millennials. Back in my day, Misha says, people didn't think the internet affected real life. Now the internet is real life. Get off my lawn, right? James, if you haven't seen that video of him losing his shit, it's glorious. Just beautiful. Right, the Milo video? Right, it is fantastic. I should have had it ready to go, but I didn't. So you should all just go view it. Dreezy. Ah, yes, I'm getting the fuck platformed out of me on YouTube chat. Platform me, daddy. Renee says, you all saw the Alex Jones Punch-Out special? I did not, actually. The Progressive Atheist. This guy got the idea for the topic of his show from Kevin Logan. Upside Down Letters. Bigotry to own the libs. Renee. Milo. Greek acting like Stewie. Dreezy. No step on snake. Brian says, sup doomies. Oh, now Theo and Kennedy and Renee are talking in the chat. At this point, they were talking about the random helicopter talk that happened in the last live stream. You can all jump into that live stream. It's available as a replay to get the whole gist there. I'm not going over that again. Jeez. Renee says, stop being poor, Milo Thatcher. All right. Brian says, last time I heard of Milo was when he was booed out of a bar. He has been right. There was a DSA meeting in Brooklyn, and Milo showed up with a buddy to like have brunch or something, and the DSA basically counter protested his brunch, and he left the venue without having his meal. Fantastic. Kennedy says, yeah, Milo has no influence anymore, right? Renee says, sorry, Milo, but you'll never be as cool as David Bowie on coke. Kennedy, deplatforming is good and wholesome when it's someone I don't like. I agree, as it may sound hypocritical, but it's not. It is not. Kennedy says, deplatform everything. Kennedy, ban, you're all banned. None of you are free of sin, excuse me. Dreezy talking about Elon Musk. That car tunnel is really something. Kennedy, yep, it sure is a tunnel. Dreezy, if I had a car patent and a car elevator patent, and I just shoehorned both of those into my next project because of my patent. Really, that is what it is. Oh yeah, Oxy pissed me off during the feed by saying, is this the Michael Brooks show? Screw you, Oxy. Screw you. Dreezy poking fun at me here. Matt, why did you leave MR too early? Was it too early? Stop leaving things too early. Yes, it was too early, and I will say screw you to you as well. Oxy says Matt was forced to leave MR because of the aliens. Right. Sam fired me from MR. Right. I'm going to just leave that there so the rumor lingers that Sam fired me from MR. From the Majority Report. Also, a hint as to why I left MR. Oxy, I don't appreciate you calling my son an alien. Brian, the real test is whether or not Jones will tone the crazy down to get back on the money wagon. No, he won't. Renee, Alex Jones getting McGinnis. Mwah, kissing his fingers like a chef, says Renee. Oxy, he's got hot blood pumping through his veins. Beta male vitality, right. Kennedy, I doubt he can turn the crazy down. If he backpedals, his fans will probably literally murder him. That will probably happen. Next to McGinnis, Alex Jones looks subdued, says Renee. In certain ways, yes. Misha, I remember my dad watching an Alex Jones documentary on Waco when I was a kid. So my dad's been watching him at least since the 90s, right? Well, early on, Alex Jones was just like your run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist. I mean, are they usually to the right? Yeah. But he really wasn't like a right-wing ideologue quite in the early days, at least not on his show. He was more like, the aliens and the Illuminati and all that fun conspiracy theory stuff. Kennedy, why did Gavin dress like that when he went on InfoWars? I have no idea. Renee says, I prefer Gigi Allen, right. Brian also asks, why did Gavin spread his butthole on camera? Why does he do any of this? Yeah, I don't know. Oxy, fax me when Alex Jones is willing to push out a massive butt plug live on air. I'll do that. I'll fax you, Oxy. Dreezy says he was about to push it out on his Twitch stream. We didn't even talk about Twitch really today. We should have, but that'll have to be another episode. Kennedy, my dad defends Alex Jones sometimes. He's willing to listen to him even though he knows he's full of shit because he thinks literally every news station is just as ridiculous as Jones is. It's crazy. Dreezy, but when they banned him right before it got out of it, it's sad, right? Actually, say what you will about Gavin, but he has an impressive asshole. Well, you can say that. Brian, the thing is that Jones knows how to sugar the pill that is toxic content. Dreezy, Alex Jones is pushing out a butt plug live on his stream, and they were like, what? Alex Jones isn't allowed here. Censor him now. What is going on in the chat? I feel like I say that every episode. Alex Jones fills the big brother role, says Renee. Let me go past some of this craziness on the live chat. Oh, Oxy, David Packman put out a video the other day saying Amazon Pay was closing his Patreon account. Was closing his Amazon Pay account because he had a Patreon and that it somehow violated their TOS, terms of service. That's really weird. I have to look more into that. Dreezy says, I will try to read a terms of service someday. Misha says that's creepy. Oh, for sure. Really, I have to look into that. Something is weird there. Brian says, I love how Joe Rogan dropped Jones when he got banned, as if he wasn't always a fucking nut job, right? Once you find AJ, you head down McGinnis's massive gateway, says Oxy, right? The Progressive Atheist says there's even a website called Leaving Alex Jonestown where a guy discusses how he overcame his InfoWars brainwashing. Theo says, I think there's InfoWarsDirt.com. Dreezy, love to watch Alex actually meet his weird fans in real life and get creeped out by them. That's always fun. Right. Right. So what y'all doing for the holidays? Oxy, is that a problem with deplatforming and just a flaw in the mode in which they're deplatforming someone? Talking about in my slippery slope. Right. Dreezy, I'm tired of all the magazines saying platform is the thing. Louis, haha, dad joke. Somewhere I dropped in a dad joke. I don't remember it though. Theo, against Brexit and Corbyn. I'm not sure what you're talking about here. Was this the, probably we were talking about Britain first, right? Progressive Atheist, according to the intellectual dark web, there's not such a thing as Islamophobia. It's a word made up by fascists to manipulate morons into silencing any criticism of Islam. Renee, open nationalism, taking back Britain from the naysayers and open borders. Right. Theo says, how is that different from Brexit? Right. How is that different from Brexit? Right. Dreezy says, man, the internet is weird. Right. I agree. This is where we're right. Tumblr here now. All right. And Renee and Dreezy were talking about how Rachel said Farage for Nigel Farage. I wasn't going to correct her on that one because I think it's completely legitimate to call him whatever the fuck you want because screw Nigel Farage. He doesn't deserve to have his last name spoken with such a pompous dictation or pronunciation, whatever the hell you want to say. Farage. And Renee, Angela Nigel, I don't know how to say her name actually, has foot in mouth disease due to left-splaining the benefits of banning immigration. I've actually not read Death to Normies or whatever it's called. I need to look more into that. I need to read it. Should probably look into having her on the show. I know there's a whole thing around her and around it. One thing I'd like to do more on this show in the coming year, and I'm going to do it, having more people like the Kent State Gun Girl on this show. I want to have more right-wingers on this show, 100%. Or people I would debate in terms of Angela there. The Progressive Atheist says, there's terrible people on both sides, believe me. Dreezy, I think reactionary male chauvinists were a thing across the flat earth before Reddit or whatever. Right. Louis corrected me when I said retroactively. Beforehand is proactively, Matt. That's what Louis says, right? Renee, fuck Opie and Anthony and Joe Rogan. The Progressive Atheist says, not Opie as in Ron Howard on the Andy Griffin Show. Griffith Show. Right. Renee prefers the Jerky Boys. Progressive Atheist says Opie and Anthony were funny as fuck, though. I don't think so. Theo says I always hated it. Renee says name-dropping Bill Burr and Louis C.K. They're much better than Opie and Anthony. Treasy says I'm a fan of the bands. Louis, again, I did a dad joke, and I guess I don't remember it. Renee says put Laura Loomer and Lena Dunham in a cage with no food for a week. What's the deal with milk, says Renee? Isn't the milk for whenever you get mace? Dreezy says it's to prove you're genetically good at having milk poured on you. Right. Milk is a white supremacist thing, oddly enough. I'll have to go more into that. Oxy promoting another channel's Patreon. Screw that. Oh yeah, when I tweeted out the show, at first I said, because you have nothing better to do tonight. And people thought it was a burn and shade thrown at Michael Brooks, who was doing an episode of the Michael Brooks Show tonight. And I did not realize he was doing an episode of the Michael Brooks Show tonight, because he usually does an episode of his show on Tuesdays. But apparently, according to my dad, who's more informed about this stuff than I am, Michael double up this week because he is off next week. Again, he is off next week because he's choosing to give himself off. It's his show. That's weak. I am going to do a show next week. Screw that. Just because it's the week of Christmas, I'm doing a show. I don't care if it's just a show of me by myself in the live stream and telling you all the wonderful things my son got for Christmas, because I don't get anything anymore for Christmas. That's going to be the stream. I don't take time off from you guys. My doomies. My legion of doomed. Oxy says just ask yourself what Michael Brooks would do. Treasy says Michael Brooks would eat dinner at Matt's house tonight and sleep on the couch. I'm hungry, guys. I've been up since like 4:45 a.m. I actually did a show, a Turkish news show, based in Turkey. The show was filmed at 5:15 a.m. this morning, my time, East Coast time. And I had to be up then. It was on the Google hearing, and Google has a monopoly, and the belief that Google has anti-conservative bias from Republicans. And I believe it should be up online somewhere. I'll get you guys that link if you're interested. I'll probably tweet it out. I am exhausted. It's now 11 p.m. And I've been up since. I did a report on the Slack U.S. sanctioned country user ban. And I did another story I cannot remember at this point in time because I'm exhausted. And I've yet to eat dinner, so I'm going to go do that. Let me just read these last comments. Oxy said Discord is stupid, but it's free. Dreezy says I like IRC, right? Slack costs money if you really want to use it to its full extent. Brian says I found Discord to be a little confusing at first as well. Tracy says, oh right, I remember Matt left the show to be a dad now. LOL, make us all look like dicks, Matt. Right, that's the reason. I mean, if Sam was able to pay me more, I would have stayed, but apparently he couldn't at the time because it was before Majority Report blew up. And now who knows how much they're raking in, but whatever. That's for another day, even though I've mentioned it in every single episode, probably since the inception of this podcast. The Progressive Atheist, Tom Hartman blocked me on Twitter. Glenn Greenwald, too. What have you done to them, the Progressive Atheist? Those are weird people to be blocked by if you're a progressive. Theo says, Les Doomies. Dreezy says, here comes the salt. Yeah, it came. Renee says, gotta dress up as Chairman Santa, Matt. Right. Dedication to Matt Binder's core brand proposition, says Brian. Right, that's true. That's true. Renee says, Gavin thinks he's a chimpanzee, or at least as funny as one. Oh, right. It's like Gavin gave birth to Alex Jones in reverse. And the final live chats of the episode. Legion of Doomed works, says Renee. Right, you could actually go to legionofdoomed.com. I grabbed that one too to forward you all to the Patreon. Because that's actually the $5 tier. It's called the Legion of Doomed. Before you guys came up with Doomies, which is probably actually shorter and better. But I like both. Legion of Doomed is the wrestling and comic book reference for me, so I like that as well. I'll give these comments too, and then that's it. The Progressive Atheist says, I use sarcasm in my comments, and some people don't get it. Theo says, no. Les Doomers. Oh, I get it, Theo. It wasn't Les Doomies. It was Les Doomers. Right. Dreezy says, mini MSNBC talking about Majority Report. And Rich B, with his first comment in the live chat for today, and with the final comment of the live chat for the episode. Thank you for this, Rich B. It's the perfect way to close out this wonderful show. For this evening, Rich B says, Sam Cedar is a corporate sellout. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Progressive Atheist is informing me that Glenn Greenwald blocked him because he questioned him about Trump-Russia denialism. Okay, but Sam Cedar's a corporate sellout by Rich B is a much better way to end the episode. So, sorry, Progressive Atheist, you didn't get that last word in. I repeated Rich B's comment. Take care, everyone, and see you all next time. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy belated Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Diwali, whatever you celebrate. Even if you just put up a tree like I do because you friggin' enjoy how this season just feels. Thank you. Good night. And see you all next time on Doomed.